A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Mary Flood, legal consultant with Andrevet Legal Media and Marketing, David Branham, professor of political science at the University of Houston downtown, and Joy Sewing, news columnist for the Houston Chronicle. Mary, David, Joy, welcome to Houston Matters.
Hi,
Thank
Craig.
you.
Thank you, Craig.
Panel, during a briefing Monday, David Richardson, the acting head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, reportedly said he was not aware the country has a hurricane season. Reuters reported Monday, based on 4 sources familiar with the situation, that FEMA staff were left baffled by the remark. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA's parent agency, said the comment was indeed a joke and that FEMA's ready for the Atlantic hurricane season, which of course began Sunday and lasts through the end of November. And a source tells Reuters Richardson said during the briefing that there wouldn't be changes to the agency's disaster response plans, despite having told staff to expect a new plan last month. Richardson's comments come amid staff cuts and some top officials' departures at the agency. The head of FEMA says he did not know there was a hurricane season here. He might have been joking. Whether he was or not, is this good, bad, or ugly? Mary Flood.
It's ugly, Craig, and it's also a little dangerous. If this was a joke, a whole lot of his staff didn't realize that this was a joke. The new head of FEMA making a joke about hurricane season strikes me like the new head of Health and Human Services saying there are no children in poverty in the United States, or the new head of Veterans Affairs joking that there's no such thing as PTSD. Ha, ha, ha. That wasn't funny. Richardson's boss, the proud dog murderer, Kristi Noem, said that there have been huge cuts in FEMA and getting rid of D.C. bloat, and they're going to leave more of it to the states. But at the same time, the huge cuts that FEMA has done has caused them to not do the seminars that they normally do to the states because they don't have the money for it. I respect his Marine service, but I think he's part of a cadre, a squad of unprepared sycophants that have been appointed by this president. And because my name is Flood, and I've been a reporter in Houston for decades, every editor thought it was hilarious to send me to hurricanes beforehand. Just so you know, the best place to wait for a hurricane is New Orleans, and the worst place to wait for a hurricane is a rickety beach motel down in South Texas.
Oh boy.
But there's no good place to see the aftermath. And there will be life, limb, and homes destroyed, and it's just no laughing matter, and it shouldn't be run by somebody ignorant.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly? Joy Sewing.
Very ugly. I totally agree with 100% with what Mary said. Obviously, he has never been in a hurricane. He's never experienced not having power for 9, 10, 12 days. He hasn't experienced a loss of life, which we've had in many hurricanes through the years. So the fact that even if it was a joke, it's still out of line and unprofessional and disheartening for the people who've actually experienced and survived hurricanes here in Houston.
Okay, good, bad, or ugly? David Branham.
I don't think. How do you say this is good? Is there a possible option there? It's at best it's a joke that he should not have told. Let's say he already knows that there's hurricane season and so forth. In today's government, especially in the controversial governments that we have, where the other side is looking for anything it can find to criticize you for, a joke like that just opens up the door for all of that. So on the very nicest level, it was a stupid thing to do. And, after the history we had in New Orleans with Katrina, where Michael Brown was Secretary of FEMA and made a complete mess of it during the George W. Bush administration, that is not a joke that people are going to receive well. So on the topic, though, I mean, I personally have been an advocate for Donald Trump saying, okay, we need to put more things on the states because the states they don't have debt like the federal government does. When you're $37 trillion in debt, every single American owes over $100,000 to the federal government. We're in debt bad, and so deferring costs to the states is a good idea. But when you talk about hurricanes, Donald Trump's constituents, that his strongest part of America is those southern states that are hit by hurricanes constantly. So what he's saying is that we should put more strain on those states that are his states. That's his core constituents there. And so now he's going to, with this new policy of, okay, let's put more on the states. Let's let FEMA get cut back. Let's make it where the federal government isn't so responsible. This is going to hurt the very people that vote for him most often. So I'm very interested to sit back and watch what happens during hurricane season. If FEMA does not react in a way that the people of the South will be satisfied with. If they don't, then it's all of a sudden going to be Trump who's going to be criticized more than anybody. And also, you remember back, that was one of his biggest criticisms of Biden, was what happened in North Carolina. And now his administration is actually cutting back further. So I'm willing to sit back and wait, see what happens, and hope the devastation doesn't hurt too badly in the process.
Well, if you're a guy who thinks you can move a hurricane around with a Sharpie, that might explain a lot of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you can't. But hurricanes don't hit Washington State. They don't hit up on the East Coast very often. Not the northern East Coast. They do every once in a while, but the center of hurricanes are right down at the lower Atlantic coast and the Gulf of Mexico, and those are the people who vote for Donald Trump the most. So he better perform, and this new FEMA director better perform too.
I think that he should relocate his office to this area for during the hurricane season, just so he can, get a hands-on feeling.
So he needs to go to Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. Until November anyway, right? Yeah.
Panel, after losing more than 560 employees earlier this year due to Trump administration cuts and retirements, sources tell CNN the National Weather Service has now received permission to hire 125 meteorologists and specialists. The weather agency has had to cut back hours and staff at a half dozen forecast offices across the country so far. It's not exactly great timing with the aforementioned Atlantic hurricane season now underway. In addition to helping to ease the burden on staffing weather forecast offices, staff added back in May eventually allow the agency to increase data gathering weather balloon launches, which have been cut back since the staffing shortages began. The National Weather Service may get about 20 to 25% of recent staff openings filled eventually. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Joy.
Wow, I think it's both good and bad. I think it's good that they are able to add more people back. We definitely need, the National Weather Services and all that it offers. But the fact that so many people lost their jobs behind this, and when you see this with companies where they lay off a bunch of people and then they start hiring people back, it's almost like talking out both sides of your neck. But it's a good and bad thing. And the fact that now, there's so many people who lost their jobs behind the layoffs.
Did you say talk out of both sides of your neck?
Did it? Yeah.
Okay.
Is that this?
Well, I've heard out of both sides of your mouth. I'm trying to imagine how a neck talks.
That's what I was doing too. I was thinking.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe his mouth.
I kind of like neck better.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know. I think I heard neck. I don't know.
I like it.
I like it too.
It gives an interesting image to the mind. Anyhow, good, bad, or ugly.
Maybe
David.
it's a Southern thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's bad, but I don't think that. I think there's probably some positions that needed to be cut in the National Weather Service. And I'm a person, like I said, who believes that we should move some of this stuff onto the states. And so we can do a lot of this at the state level instead of the federal level. But when you cut your employees and then all of a sudden you want them back, you don't get all the best ones back. When you cut these employees, the best ones go out and get jobs elsewhere and will never, ever come back and trust you again. So this isn't the way to get the most productive National Weather Service to me. This is a way of, making sure that, okay, it's doing it for less money, but not necessarily better. Matter of fact, it's probably not going to be better. So on that level, I think it's bad.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly, Mary?
I think it's ugly and dangerous also, but that's a really good point about the good people. Mm-hmm, and I do think that they were, the fact that they're trying to fix is a good thing because it was such an idiotic mistake. But we lose 560 and get 125. Yeah. There were tornadoes in the middle of the country, and they were having to move people from other offices to try to make sure they were in the right places. Well, all we need is a couple of hurricanes, and that's not going to work. I mean, they're still talking about it not being 24/7. The weather's kind of 24/7, and not being able to put up the same number of weather balloons, which help us predict, This administration has no respect for the rule of law and no respect for public safety. Their only priority seems to be amassing power, getting at their enemies, and maybe making some money. because my father called himself the Cloud Master, I'm kind of a weather nerd, and I give money to Eric Berger's Space City Weather, and I subscribe to another weather service about hurricanes. And as a woman who kept 2 pairs of rubber boots up to your knees in my trunk for years, because when I was sent out, again, because I thought it was funny, the photographers would always take one pair, so I learned I had to keep 2. I have seen, after floods and hurricanes and tornadoes, the tears and the losses, and I just worry that more storms may wreak more havoc with fewer people at NOAA, and I'm scared.
Panel, layoffs are always tough, and when they are announced in large numbers, whole communities are jarred by the news. And that is why residents of Midland County were especially put off when the Texas Workforce Commission announced that Houston-based Chevron planned to lay off 800 workers from its Midland campus. Just one small problem. Chevron only employs about 600 workers there. So was it laying off everybody, closing the facility? And who are these other 200 workers? Well, as the Workforce Commission admitted last Thursday, the number was a typo. 200 are being let go, and that's all Chevron had ever announced. The layoffs will take effect July 15th. According to the Cron's Allison Ackerman, Chevron's trying to relocate as many workers as possible and will offer severance to the others. The Texas Workforce Commission mistakenly suggests Chevron's firing more employees than it has at its facility in Midland. Is this good, bad, or ugly, David?
Well, obviously it's bad to make a mistake. It's embarrassing, but I don't think this is such a bad mistake that it had real hardcore consequences. It just looked ugly. I mean, it's like this is the state that Elon Musk now lives in. So maybe they were taking a lesson in misreporting things here. Yeah. So control yourself, Mary. But yeah, they just misreported it. I'm glad that it's not 800, especially when they only had 600. So I'm glad it's only 200. And but in the end, it was gonna have the same result. The bad thing is that when you make a mistake like this, when you're talking about people's livelihoods, this is a high impact policy that's going in place here, where people's lives are going to change seriously and dramatically. When you do that, you should be more careful about how you report things. This is a pet peeve of mine, and I understand because I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but when you're making a report like this of this magnitude, then you should make sure that you're not making a mistake. Get somebody else to look at it. On that level, it's really bad.
All right, Mary?
I thought it was ugly, too. And, Craig, our topics have been all pretty dark. Where were you when you came up with this list here?
I'd had a day.
I guess so. Okay.
A little heavy.
Well, it's really unimpressive of the Texas Workforce Commission. Yeah, they're only a digit off, 800 to 200, but they got the date wrong, too. They need to, maybe check their work or something. After living in Houston so many years and knowing so many people who work in the energy sector, I've seen a bunch of people laid off. And some of them were really happy to be laid off because they get a big package. They know that they have skills that are transportable to all sorts of other companies here in Houston. And I've been laid off once from a law firm, and you question not only your future but your worth, and it's no fun. And I hope these folks recover. And I hope that if part of their recovery is watching the new show, The Landman, that takes place there in the Permian Basin, that Billy Bob Thornton thing, that they have the women characters have actual personalities this next season. And I think that would make these laid off workers feel so much better. Anyway, the workforce.
I sense I've kind of lost the thread here.
Did you?
Yeah.
So did I, obviously. The workforce needs to check their work and learn their numbers.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly, Joy?
I think it's ugly. I don't know if I can add anything more than what Mary and David have already said. I do think when you are playing with people's livelihoods and they hear a number like that and thinking that everybody is laid off, imagine the emotional turmoil at home when you find out that you're one of 800 people to be laid off, so your whole workforce is shutting down. So I think it's ugly. I think they made a terrible mistake, and I don't think that it should have happened, and I think they need to be more careful. And perhaps they're one of the organizations that had people laid off and hired some people back who don't have the skills.
So bottom line, check your numbers.
Check your numbers.
All 5 of our
Yeah.
panelists agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference between a million and a billion. It's not just one letter.
But Chevron didn't get anything wrong. And one of the early Cron headlines said Chevron reported it wrong, but they didn't. And these guys are.
Oh, so we got it wrong too. Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, having worked there for many years, I occasionally would make a mistake too.
yeah, we all do. We all do.
I wonder what that feels like.
No.
Mary Flood is a legal consultant with Androvet Legal Media and Marketing. David Branham is a professor of political science at the University of Houston downtown. And Joy Sewing is a news columnist for the Houston Chronicle. Mary, David, Joy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.